Okay, so I wanted to try a little bit of something new because look at this. PayPal says they're coming out and adding cryptocurrency. Now we had news from this a little bit back. So what I want to do is actually I want to go over Reuters article and I want to kind of pontificate about this here because there's a few things that I think are important. Number one, PayPal is a big company. They do a lot of international banking, and there's an area of this topic I think that they're leaning into. So one of the few things that really stands out about the article here is the way their CEO, Dan Schulman, says, we were working with central banks and thinking of all forms of digital currencies and how PayPal can play a role. Now, for those of you that are into the DeFi sector, you would note that you can earn actually quite high APYs on lending stablecoins. We now have in the market USDC, a highly regulated stablecoin. So I think a part of this is what this leans into is the very likelihood that PayPal is going to start their own internal currency for how they manage their funds. And you can get a bit more of a glimpse of this in the article too, because of the way they talk about some of the aspects. Because it's not going to be like, oh, you can have a Bitcoin wallet and I can send you Bitcoin. They're going to do it internally with a kind of a balance sheet in terms of trading back and forth. So one of the key points that we're looking at again here is in this part of the Reuters article, they talk about volatility. It says, again, this is another quote from their seat. It says, we're going about it in a fundamentally different way to make sure we provide the maximum amount of safety to our merchants. So what's interesting is that in PayPal, if I send you money and you're a merchant, I can actually get a refund with you because of the contract that's based between some of the buying and selling. So it's very likely that PayPal is going to incorporate a PayPal coin, and then you can trade for Bitcoin or for Ethereum somewhere within their balance sheet, or maybe even add loan and APY features, which would be a huge move for PayPal. So I would assume that more importantly, what they're talking about here is not just the integration of PayPal into the ecosystem itself, or Bitcoin into the ecosystem of PayPal or Ethereum, but the actual using of these rails to create the value of the product, which is what DeFi is really kind of aimed at. So again here, there's another really key quote that stands out here, which is this one. They've secured the first conditional cryptocurrency license from the State Department of Financial Services that will initially allow the purchase of Bitcoin, crypto, and Ethereum. So it's probably a very complex and very expensive conversation with their legal team about how do we integrate and where can we actually use this technology to be beneficial to what our internal company infrastructure allows for. Now, adding for the buying and selling of Bitcoin, it's not a big deal. But if PayPal, and again, this is where I'm pontificating, this is what I'm getting kind of reading between the lines here. If PayPal were to attribute a type of PayPal USD or a USDP, essentially the USDP or the stable coin of PayPal's holdings and Bitcoin's holdings or Ethereum, that they would make it a closed loop system so you could trade through to individual merchants and still have that merchant offer back. Now, a lot of people in crypto would cry, oh, it's not decentralized. Well, for stablecoins, for some of the people who are just trying to make a few dollars on the internet, they're not really thinking about the use case of crypto. So to give them this interoperability between the USDP, potentially, I'm kind of making a leap here for PayPal, but they could start to offer new services like earning interest on your savings in PayPal and coming out at a much higher rate than most banks. Now, we know that through liquidity and the way that these APY types of things work, that technically the more people that are lending, the smaller the APY gets because you're now part of a bigger aggregate pool of lending. So what if PayPal all of a sudden started to offer similar services to what BlockFi offers, which you could, if you save your P or USDP, right? Because a lot of people have a fair amount of money in PayPal as an intermediary for their Shopify accounts, for SEO, for any number of digital products and services that are out there, even in the Arcane Bear. We use PayPal. So I wanted to use this moment to just try to pontificate about something, share with you guys my ideas, and then that way I can kind of try something new out, which is just riffing and ranting about what I think, because this would be very smart of PayPal. Effectively, they have a huge user base with a lot of operating capital to move into a financially regulated area, and they have experience doing it already. So providing services like getting interest, like what BlockFi does, what Digifox does through their accounts with Compound, would be of a huge strategic advantage for PayPal over top of any of the banks that you can get out there today, and with the user base to do so. Now again, this is mostly a conversation from their end, I would assume, of like regulatory hurdles and all the crazy things that it would take for them to be able to regularly offer this type of service, maybe even globally. And that's huge, that because they're going to set the precedent, and they have the money to do so. So although I'm a huge proponent of the beauty of DeFi, like the fact that you can just open a liquidity pool on Uniswap, and for the first time ever, we're given the tools of the bankers, I think that these intermediaries are going to become of a huge benefit because it would integrate the regular everyday PayPal user into potentially using digital stablecoins like USDP or whatever you'd like to call them, whatever PayPal, even if they're smart enough to come up with something like this. I'm making the leap in hopes that they know what it is that they're doing. Because just buying and selling cryptocurrencies is not that going to make that big of a difference for the average retail investor right now. But earning interest and being able to have this instantaneous transfer of funds for PayPal that's digital and in their back end of their own kind of USD PayPal ledger, how they can integrate the buying and selling and holding liquidity pools on both sides. That sounds smart for them. Anyways, this is just an update on PayPal or whatever, and I wanted to produce a different type of content where I'm sitting in front of the camera. So we're going to be doing more of these where I just rant because you guys all want it. You want me to go out in the jungles and talk, so I will do more of that. And we're just going to make sure that on a daily basis, after we do, and around when we do our market analysis, we sit down, we take a look at what's going on in the news today, and we pontificate, because that's all about the news is good for. And even though I can't see the future, it's good to imagine it together. Anyways, deal with the Arcade Bear. See you guys in the next time.